Meantime, Bitcoin's recent rally on pause today, and crypto-related stocks like Coinbase, Strategy, and Robinhood also lower. This as an update to the Senate's Clarity Bill would ban federal officials from issuing or sponsoring cryptocurrencies. Anthony,
is that a bad idea to ban federal officials from sponsoring cryptocurrencies?
It seems like it's logical, but apparently we do need a law in order to make that happen.
Well, I think the big thing is the Democrats said to the White House, we need an ethics provision that has teeth in it. And so they said, what do you want? And they said what they wanted, and the White House gave it to them. And now the Democrats are saying, well, that's not enough. We want state AGs to be able to enforce these federal ethics provisions. So that's a real problem, because then you have to redo all of the ethics codes in the federal government, because you can't have the state just prosecuting the crypto and not all the other ethical potential violations in the federal code. So they've got to get around that, and they've got to have a compromise. But then the biggest problem is the procedural one. You only have 14 days to go before the August recess. So you need what's called the procedural prep for a bill like this to happen before the weekend. Today's Wednesday. That means sometime tomorrow afternoon, we're going to have to hear that that's in play so they can get it down to the floor to vote. If it gets to the floor, it's going to pass. That's my opinion, because I think a lot of the younger Democrats are not going to want to go up against the crypto bros and their PACs come November. That's my opinion. If it doesn't get to the floor, it dies a brutal death. And then guys like Brian Armstrong, after all the hours and time and energy that they put into this, they start building their businesses off the shore of the United States.
May I ask Anthony a question?
You may.
Yeah. See, I asked permission, isn't that nice?
Yes.
Why is it so difficult? You hear from people, I know I do, I'm sure you do. The game is rigged. The politicians, whether it's Democrats, Republicans, it goes across the aisle, not allowing them to trade. Why is that such a difficult concept? Not just crypto, equities in general.
Well, they make money doing that. You know, if you're paying them $180,000 a year and they have insider information, they're allowed to trade on it, they make millions of dollars a year. And so I would rather take a Singapore model, pay them $15 million a year, $10 million a year, and then get really tight on them with the ethics. But we don't do that in this country. They can't afford two houses. Let's say you're a member of the House, you make $180,000 a year. How are you going to live in your district, and how are you going to live in Washington on that money? So they have all these different loopholes, and they have all these junkets, and they have these ways to get them money. And, LinkedIn today, I'll send it to you guys. They showed Nancy Pelosi's stock market performance versus the S&P and Warren Buffett.
It's remarkable.
Okay, so it's remarkable. And so is that fair? Does it make sense? It doesn't make sense. Remember, when Peter Schweizer's book came out in 2011, they banned it. And then they put it back in by voice vote. They didn't even go on the floor because they didn't want C-SPAN to see them voting for it. So they did a conference call, and they reinstated it. And so to me, it's very, very bad. But you also have to understand you have to pay these people. If you're not going to pay them, they're going to find ways to make money so they can afford their lifestyle.
All right, Anthony, you were a crypto skeptic, then you became a big bull, and you're in on it. Bitcoin is your thing, right?
Yeah.
So if you're crypto curious, but you don't really get the underlying, the pillars of it, what about looking at, last night we had a great conversation. Well, I thought it was a great conversation. Maybe I brought it up. That's why it was a great conversation. We were talking about some of the institutional platforms. We had talked about Coinbase and what they do. We talked about Bullish. We talked about, Circle, throw it all on. Are those interesting businesses, whether you believe in Bitcoin or not?
Listen, I love those businesses. We have a First Trust SkyBridge digital economy ETF called CRPT. And if you look at the list, all of those businesses you just mentioned are in those holdings. And so I'm a big believer in the picks and shovels of the digital economy and this sort of new age fintech. Now, I also believe that the stuff is coming, whether people like it or not, because it's better technology than what we have. This is the Uber problem. Okay, let's go back to Uber. Government hated Uber. Mayors hated Uber. Taxi commissions hated Uber. Who liked Uber? The people. And so the people basically burned them off and won out. You don't have enough people in crypto right now to fight back the government resistance to what's going on in Washington.
Just quickly.
Yeah.
Bitcoin, where's it go?
Well, it's going to grind higher because the sentiment is terrible. We're doing this a long time. Relative strength index, all-time low. Fear is at like a 7 on a scale of 1 to 100 in terms of greed and fear. And there's no supply of Bitcoin in the marketplace, and there's no interest. And if you go search searchable terms on Google, Bitcoin's down 55% in terms of searchable terms. All of those reasons, I think Bitcoin is bottomed I don't think it gets much.
If you found value in this breakdown, please hit the like button, subscribe, and share it with other investors who are paying attention. We're here to keep bringing you sharp analysis and voices that understand what's unfolding. Thanks for watching.
Kathy, it's great to have you here. Welcome.
Thank you, Kelly. It's great to be with you.
Am I overplaying this? I mean, to me, you guys don't have that many indices. It's kind of a big deal if there's a crypto one now, right?
That's actually right. We think about the investing nature of digital assets, the appetite to bring some sort of trusted, investable benchmark into this space. And so we've been very intentional about working with the right partners to bring a digital asset index that we think is more corollary to something like the S&P 500. And so working with Pantera Capital has been an amazing experience for us to bring this new index to life.
Although a lot of people over the past couple of years would say the churn we've seen in digital assets has made you wonder. I mean, the average turnover in the Dow and S&P is much lower. Here's what's in it now. You correct me. There's 18 constituents total. The largest 5 are Ether, Binance Coin, Solana, Tron, and Hyperliquid. So what are the requirements? How much turnover do you expect? And what do these choices represent?
Yeah, so let's just admit that digital assets moves faster than equity assets, for example. But what we're trying to bring are the same sort of principles that we have in our equity indices into digital assets. So when you think about the seasoning period, the revenue generation, the listing requirement, the liquidity behind these different protocols for these tokens, these are the things that we think matter for serious investors and asset managers in the digital asset space. And so we think because there's this likeness between what we deliver in equity indices and into this new benchmark for digital assets, we think it'll make sense for the investing public.
But Bitcoin's not in here?
Bitcoin is not in there because it's really not one of those revenue generating protocols that we think belongs in this index. It meets all of the criteria, which there are many, in order for inclusion in this index. Now, this index, just like our other equity indices, will rebalance on a quarterly basis. The top token is capped at the 35%. And no other token can receive more than 20% of the balance in this market cap weighted benchmark. So we really think that people will find the synergies between equity indices and crypto benchmarks in this new index quite compelling.
And obviously, a lot of crypto fund managers will now use this as a benchmark for their performance, and people can kind of use this as a shorthand for its performance relative to, and I think it's interesting as you emphasize the revenue generating aspect of some of these things. Is all of that legal? In other words, as we wait for the Clarity Act and all of this to pass, just explain once again, how do they generate that revenue for holders? Where is that revenue coming from?
Yeah, so these are really utilitarian-driven revenues. They're not yield-bearing instruments. And so these protocols actually have revenue that are coming from the actual usage of the protocols that we're measuring. And we really work closely with Dan Moorhead of Pantera Capital. Now, Pantera Capital, as I'm sure you know, Kelly, is one of the leading investor firms into the digital asset space. And so our methodology really looks into how are these protocols generating revenue outside of yield-based investing. And that's really how we decide what the constituents are in this new benchmark.
All right, Kathy, I want to move on and just ask you about 2 more things while you're here today. The first and foremost being your decision not to fast-track SpaceX inclusion in the S&P 500. How did you come to that decision?
So that was after a very lengthy consultation, which we typically issue when we even ever contemplate a methodology change. And so after receiving a lot of public input into whether or not we would change our methodology for fast inclusion, the independent index committees at S&P DJI really made the decision to stick to the course, to stick to our methodologies, to not move on allowing these mega IPOs to enter on a fast-track basis into the S&P 500. But this is always done with independence, with a lot of integrity and with a lot of input from the public when we issue these consultations.
If you found value in this breakdown, please hit the like button, subscribe, and share it with other investors who are paying attention. We're here to keep bringing you sharp analysis and voices that understand what's unfolding. Thanks for watching.